Getaway.
Okay, hitting record. So hi everyone, welcome to the final Getaway Live author event. Wow, it's been a really good run. This has been really fun for me and for everyone at Soho. So thank you guys for coming. For any of the new viewers out there, The Getaway was a newsletter that featured a new mystery series every week, and part of that was getting invites to events just like this. Just to let everyone know, the newsletter will be changing a little bit and start featuring some newer Soho crime titles. It'll feature some exclusive events, some giveaways, and exclusive content, so keep a lookout for that. But before then, we're having a massive sale. Every single title that was featured this summer will be on sale next week and will be available everywhere ebooks are sold. So maybe there was an author that you saw at one of these events that you've been meaning to check out, or you just want a great list of mysteries and thrillers that you can binge through. This is your chance. So check your inboxes next week. It's super exciting. And lastly, before we get started, I just want to thank all of you viewers. I know some of you have been coming week after week, and it's been a real joy to share this with you and spend some time doing this thing during this weird quarantine summer that we've been having, and just to, get away for a little bit. So I know Alexa's going to really like that joke. So before I pass it over to our wonderful speakers today, as always, even though you are muted, you are in no way silenced. Please feel free to use the chat function to type out any questions you may have, or let us know of any conversation topics that you'd like to hear more about. My colleague Alexa and I will be monitoring the chat and filtering the questions to our speakers. And without further ado, for the final time for the Getaway series, our moderator this evening is Juliet Grames.
Thank you, Stephen. And thank you all again so much for coming. This has been just a wonderful summer for me. COVID aside, we get to see so many authors from around the country and the world who I love so dearly, and to get them together in the same virtual room has been really special. And you all made it possible. So thank you for being here for us. We hope that the spirit of the Getaway lives on for a long time. And thank you for helping us learn how to reach crime readers and to bring them together during this new reality. You've really made Soho Press so happy and feel so bonded and together through all this. And thank you, of course, to our authors tonight, Kwei Quartey and Michael Sears, who I have the great privilege of having edited both of them. In Kwei's case, we've worked together on many books. Michael and I have only worked together on one book, but I hope there are going to be a lot more. But let me start by telling you about Kwei, who is just such a fantastic writer, one of the greatest technical proceduralists I've ever read. This guy can write just some of the most scientific, well-plotted mysteries, but they're also wonderful thrillers full of atmosphere. I don't know. I feel like this guy should write a textbook on how to write a mystery. Kwei, you decide
Thank you.
Profession is a suggestion, but so Kwei has, despite the fact that he is such an amazing writer, an entire other life as a physician. He retired in 2018, but when I first connected with him and I got to hear a little bit about his backstory, which I hope he'll share with you himself, I learned that this man was running his own wound clinic in Pasadena, full-time job where he was in charge of the entire clinic. And every morning he was getting up early to write, to make his childhood dream of being a writer come true. And of course, when we first started working together on the first book that Soho published, which was the third novel in the Darko Dawson series set in Ghana, he was already a very successful writer and critically acclaimed, and was somehow juggling these two careers. Kwei tonight, I hope, is going to tell us all the secrets of how he managed to do both of these things. But in the meantime, if you're looking for where to start with Kwei's magnificent oeuvre, may I suggest his brand new series featuring private investigator Emma John, which is also set in Ghana. So the first book, which is The Missing American, is that, thanks, Kwei, perfect. And there's actually a second book coming out in the spring of next year, so your timing is perfect.
Oh, yeah, actually your timing is perfect. Hold on one second.
The Darko Dawson series, which is equally excellent and all available in paperback. So You can start with Murder at Cape 3 Points, which is Soho's first book, or you can go back to his Random House books. That's fine too. We also support them, but you know, Murder at Cape 3 Points is a really good starting place.
Well, look what I got in the mail yesterday.
Oh, beautiful.
It was one,
Very
it's so nice. It's really lovely. It's so, so, so nice. I was thrilled. I didn't know what the box was. I said, what is this box? And I opened it and said, oh, because I didn't really know it was coming this early. It's amazing. It's thank you, Soho. It's really lovely. It's really lovely. I mean, the cover is fantastic.
One thing about the pandemic we have not figured out a way around is back when things were normal, the editors would always get a copy of the galley or the copy of the finished book on their desk before the author saw it. And in the very classy old days, we were supposed to like write a little note on it and overnight.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you for work. Isn't it?
Yeah.
And I haven't seen a finished copy of a book since it's so anyway, thank you for showing that. I miss those days. I look forward to returning them. But
Yeah.
and Michael, I have actually not had the opportunity to hold any finished copies of any Soho books published by Michael Sears yet. The first one, Tower of Babel, was supposed to come out in June, right in the middle of this. And we pushed it until next year because it is so dynamo. We wanted to make sure that it got all of the attention that it should get and not have to compete with the pandemic. And as it turns out, about like 600 other high priority news items. So Michael, I'm thrilled with our decision. But when Michael also had a storied career in another profession, as well as a storied career as a writer before he came to Soho. And I hope he'll tell you about that in a minute. But after 20 years, more than 20 years in finance, where he was a really big wig, he wrote a secret tell-all book. I'm kidding. He wrote a thriller set in Wall Street, the first in the Jason Stafford series. And I can't even remember how many awards that first book, Black Friday, was nominated for, but I think like the Edgar, the Seamus, the McCavity, there were a lot. I know it won the Seamus, right, Michael?
It won the Seamus Award, and it was 5, I remember.
Maybe I got them all.
Wow.
Which means I didn't win 4 of them.
Well, there's 2 ways of looking at every number like that. Get nominated for them, I'm sure have a different way of looking at it. So I think it's very, very impressive. And the Jason Stafford series, so much critical acclaim. Unfortunately, it is not published by Soho, but you're still welcome to read it. You know, that's fine. But you should definitely check out Tower of Babel, which Soho is publishing next year. It's the first in what I hope will be a new series by Michael, featuring a little bit of a down-and-out lawyer.
Yeah.
The unwritten about borough, and it is a total love letter to everything you ever wanted to know about Queens, and all of the different echelons of people who cross paths there and who can drop clues, who get involved in real estate shenanigans. And anyway, it's something to look forward to, and I'm so happy to have these 2 gentlemen here tonight in conversation. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I've said a lot of things, but I would prefer to hear in your own words for the kind people in the audience today. Can you tell us your life stories? I want to know, I want you to dig deep. I want you to tell the things you've never, ever told anyone during a book event before. Kwei, you're up first.
Okay. Well, when the world was first created, no, I'm just kidding. Well, I grew up in Ghana, where my novels are set. I grew up in Ghana until I was a teenager. And what I will remember the most about growing up is the home that I grew up in was just surrounded with books. I have a very, very vivid picture of how many books there were everywhere. There, the sitting room, the dining room, the kitchen, if you count my mom's recipe books. Then she had her sets of books because she and my father worked at the University of Ghana. So my mom was in sociology and my father was in political science. And so they had their own collections of, nonfiction stuff. And then they also had a lot of fiction and I had my own bedroom with books in it too. So I always used to, some afternoons I just browse my own house for books. And I'd always discover, I said, wait, hey, I haven't read this one. Where's this one from? And I read a lot of stuff. I loved mysteries at the time. I read children's mysteries, but I also read, you know, the classics, Dorothy Sayers and Agatha Christie, and of course Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who I still admire more than any other writer to this day. And you know, I think it was that stimulus that led me to start writing. And I started writing when I was 8 or 9. And what I used to do was either write it in longhand, or I used to type it with my 2 fingers, which, by the way, my dad used to type, and he was a writer too. And then, yes. And then I would design my own covers, staple them to the pages, and I used to love to draw as well, so I'd do the designs as well. So, and of course now they call it self-publishing, so I was, you know, well, far ahead of my time. But that definitely was the stimulus. I love to read. I used to be able to, I can't do it anymore, but I used to be able to finish 2 books in a day. I was that fast of a reader as a kid. I just like devoured them. And so that kind of environment, I think, is what led me to start writing. But I guess I just basically had it in me because, you know, my brothers lived in the same house too, and they didn't get to write. They didn't start writing. So that was my environment. And, you know, I moved in phases. After I wanted to be an author for the longest time, I decided I wanted to be a doctor, and that's a whole other story by itself. But I ended up doing actually both of them. My friends sometimes tell me, you're such a ridiculous overachiever. Couldn't you have stopped with just one? So that's the basic background. I don't know whether you want me to go any further than that.
I have questions, Kwei. For example, I mean, this is like any good mystery author here. You've kind of seeded these ideas, but you haven't really fleshed out the clues to that. So first mystery is, you said you were born and grew up in Ghana, but now you live in Pasadena. How did that happen?
Okay, all right, good segue. My mom is, oh, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. She died in June. My late mom was American, Black American, and my dad was Ghanaian. My late dad was Ghanaian, and they met in New York. From New York, they went to, there's a little aside with that. Her mom lived in New York, and when my father and mom met, they fell in love with each other. It was quite by accident, actually, but they fell in love with each other. And my dad was going to return to Ghana via London. And my grandmother, my mom's mom, said, well, you know, she's still finishing up college, so, you know, she's not going to join you, so you can go, but she's not coming with you. So in fact, they got married later in London after my mom could join my dad, and then they went to Ghana. And I lived there through my teen years, coming back to the States, you know, every summer. So I had a sort of bi-Atlantic existence.
What was your accent back then? Did you have a very like a British sounding Ghanaian accent that you would then do?
Yes.
American accent?
Yeah, it was more like a British Ghanaian accent, because my mom spoke that way. She had a lot of British friends and influences, and she lived in Britain for a long time. So I got some of that as well. So now my accent is totally mixed up. Californian, Ghanaian, British, Trinidadian. So it's all in there somewhere. But I mean, to make a long story short, just after I entered medical school there, the political scene was so bad. The economy was so bad. And at that time, it was a military regime. And my mom, after the death of my dad, decided she wanted to go back to the States. I think it was her mom, actually, that probably urged her to come back. And so once I got back, then I had to restart my journey into med school. And fortunately, I was able to get into Howard University of Medicine. And once I finished that, I wanted to come out west. So that's what I did. And so here I am in Pasadena.
I have another question for you, and I'm cheating because I know the answer to this. I just think it's so fascinating. But can you tell us about how after so many years in medicine, you rediscovered writing when you went on a trip to Ghana and met with a police officer? Just, that's such a good story. I think everyone needs to hear it.
Yeah. Well, you know, after I came out of my training, I trained in internal medicine. I was in the ICU one day, and I guess I was looking kind of despondent. And one of the nurses who knew me quite well asked me why I was looking so down. And I sort of, I'm probably paraphrasing, but I think I said something like, I don't know, this MD, this doctor thing is so anticlimactic. And I mean, I just felt as though there was something else, you know, waiting for me. And she said, well, what is it that you've always really wanted to do? And I said, I've always wanted to be a writer. And she said, well, what's stopping you? And she was absolutely right. And so from then I went to UCLA extension course in creative writing. And then after that, I continued writing on my own. And the visit to Ghana was actually after I'd sent in a manuscript to an agent who it was set in a Ghana-like country because I hadn't been there in a while. And she asked me a very pointed question. She said, I love the book. I don't think I can sell it, but I'm just wondering, why did you set it in a Ghana-like country? Didn't you say you grew up there? And then that's when I realized, well, I'm obviously going to have to go back and do some research. And I did get a really massive culture shock when I went back because things had changed so much. I couldn't recognize all the landmarks I had remembered as a child. I didn't know where the city began, where it stopped, whereas before it used to be, you know, very well demarcated. And it was just amazing. It was a fantastic experience. And once I got there, I tried to get to see some officials at CID, the Criminal Investigations Department. And I was going there one day, and one of the cops called me over, and I thought, oh, well, I'm dead now. I'm probably in trouble or something. And he asked me, do you remember me? This is a very famous Ghanaian question. Do you remember me? And of course, it puts you on the spot. It's like, do you lie and say yes, or do you just tell the truth and look bad and say no? I said, no, I don't. He said, I saw you, I was in the same phone store, because I went to a store to buy a new phone. He said, I noticed you because I was one of the people waiting. And so he recognized me and he said hello. And then I asked him, well, what do you do here? He said, oh, I'm in homicide. So I almost sort of fell on my knees and said, thank you, Lord. And he helped me with a lot of my books, you know, just the technical questions about CID and police procedure over there. So yeah, it was a really fortuitous meeting. Yeah, it's great.
So I think my favorite part of that story was when you were like, I'm paraphrasing what you just said, but I just struggled through 4 years of pre-med and then 4 years of medical school plus a hellish internship and this entire career so that I can, and now I'm bored, I'm not struggling enough. So I'm going to go struggle through the labor of exposing my heart on a page to people I don't know and then going around and trotting off to agents and risking getting rejected by them.
So not logical, right? It just doesn't make sense, right?
That's anticlimactic for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So.
Now, Michael, I'm afraid it's your turn. So you have to share all your deepest, darkest secrets.
Well, I'm older, so it's going to take me much longer. But I was born in Manhattan on the Lower East Side. We lived there.
Oh, that's where we lived.
A few years. We have pictures of me in a stroller at my Katz's Delicatessen and whatnot. It's how we ended up there and how we lived in a project that was I guess a middle income housing development there. Mitchell Lama, they called it at the time. And in our elevator bank, we had Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, lived upstairs. We had also had a whole lot of mob guys, I found out later on.
Really?
And everyone knew that's, no, he doesn't go to work. That's why he's sitting out on the stoop all day long waiting for somebody to send him out. And then I grew up on Long Island on the South Shore, and my mother was a voracious reader, and I picked it up as well, and we were not wealthy. We were okay, but we didn't buy books. So the library was, that was a big deal. And me and my mom going there once a week and coming home with a stack. And she really guided me a lot and introduced me to so many authors, from Walter Brooks, the Freddie the Pig series. I gobbled all those up. And then later on to humorists, S.J. Behrman, all of these that I was reading that were like, by this time, 20, 30 years out of date, but still really funny. And I absorbed so much of that. P.G. Wodehouse.
Yeah.
And I also had another love, and that was acting. And so in college, I ended up with a dual major in theater and in writing, in English. And I kept bouncing one against the other for years and years. I was a professional actor. I wrote screenplays, not one of which was ever went anywhere at all, but I kept writing the whole time.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. You are a professional actor. Now, tell the gentle people in our audience, is there a movie where they may catch you, a glimpse of you, or is there a commercial that you should Google online to see on YouTube?
Well, thank God all the commercials are long gone, and all my bit parts and day players on soaps are long forgotten. But you can see me for a blink of an eye a couple of times in an Albert Finney movie, The Wolven. And I'm a member of the security force, and I opened the door for Albert Finney.
Oh, wow.
And the door that they shot was actually a large closet. And we had to enter the main room from that closet.
Oh.
So I spent a day in a closet with Albert Finney.
Wow.
Which was really cool. He tells great stories. On the other hand, he smokes cigars nonstop.
In that
in that little closet, yes. And offered me which just would have turned my stomach right upside down.
Well, so Hollywood is very glamorous, it sounds like.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So then what happened?
After 8 years, something like that, of pounding my head against this career, I said I've got to do something else. Oh, how about being a writer? No, that's another place full of rejection and no money. So I went back to school. I went to Columbia, got an MBA, and went to Wall Street, where I slaved there for the next 20 some years. once again, writing. Whenever I had the chance, I was kind of I was a trader, but I was the go-to guy for writing marketing materials, for you know, putting books together for dog and pony shows and whatnot. And I wrote memoirs, whatever, of every vacation the family went on. And those are still fun to pull out and read at times. So.
Yeah.
And eventually, Wall Street's for young people. There are some my age still hanging on, but not a whole lot. You've got to just have a incredible love of it. I didn't. I got to a point and I said, okay, that's enough. And then, what am I going to do with all of this time now? And I gave myself a gift of a creative writing class at NYU. And then I took another, and then I switched to the new school, and so on, and joined a really good writing workshop run by a woman named Jennifer Bell. Out of that workshop, when my first book came out, there were 2 other books from that workshop that came out the same year. It was a really good experience. And then all of a sudden, here I was, and I was doing it. I was a writer. At some point, I remember thinking back, gosh, wouldn't it be great if I could just get like a short story published someplace? And now I've done that too, as well as having 4 books published and soon 5.
Great.
Michael, will you go ahead and tell us about the 5th? Because I didn't tell them much about Tower of Babel, but will you tell us about a little bit about the plot and the inspiration?
Okay. Tower of Babel takes place almost entirely in the borough of Queens. I have lived in Manhattan and next door to Queens here on Long Island. And actually, for a while, I was doing real estate projects, not a whole lot different from what my character does, and got to see,
which is a really
lot of Queens. And Queens is a pretty extraordinary place. It is the home to so many different ethnic minorities. I call it the single most diverse ethnic community in the United States and probably the world.
More than Brooklyn, really?
yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
And there are and it's not just a few. There are whole sections that there's a group of Sinhalese, and there's a solid Polish section, and certainly Italian and Irish and all of that, but really from all over the globe, and they're all in this wonderful mixture there, and they mostly get along, and in the research that I was doing on real estate back then, I was amazed at I had lunch at a place that was run by Baha'i women, and right next door is a Chinese restaurant that did nothing but dim sum, it's every block in Queens is like that. Everyone is different, and I thought this is a wonderful place to meet up with those kinds of differences between people. Queens is also As are many boroughs in New York City, famous for its crooked politicians and awful real estate developers. And so I had bad guys right there that I could just had to figure out what it was they were doing and write the story.
If anyone in the audience is keeping track here, the recipe for a perfect crime novel is lots of really well-described ethnic food and bad guys. So one of the things about Tower of Babel that's great is just about every interview that Ted Molloy conducts is at a restaurant somewhere in Queens. So you really get some food tourism there. And Kwei here will tell you that when he was writing, when he was about to turn a manuscript in to me, he'd be like, did I put enough food writing in? And he really did. Kwei is a very
No, actually, no, it wasn't that. It was, I named some dishes and I sort of, glided over them. And you wrote in the margins, it's like, more details about this, more food porn. That's where I learned it.
I may have in fact used the phrase more food porn. That is true. So what I'm trying to it turned out to have been a really excellent, beautiful food writer who just needed to be drawn out by the right editor. And
You're right.
You're right. One thing you can count on in any crime fiction by either of these gentlemen is some really excellent food descriptions. So for readers like me,
that's great.
Food and bad guys. So Tower of Babel, folks have to wait until next spring, unfortunately, but they should get excited about it now. What about you?
I'm so glad.
I'm reading it right now. I'm reading it right now.
Yeah.
What about you, Kwei? Tell us about your latest.
Okay, well, my very latest, well, I'll do my first latest.
Tell them about Missing American. Yeah.
Yes, The Missing American.
Buy that one or get it from their library.
Yeah, The Missing American, I don't know. Oh, I have to give you this background story first. Okay, so in my last Darko Dawson novel, which was called Death by His Grace, I introduced a new female character who was going to be Darko Dawson's assistant, or sort of sidekick. And Darko Dawson, for those who don't know, works in Accra, the capital of Ghana, at the Criminal Investigations Department. And, all along he's had, male partners. And then I introduced a new one called Mabel Sappho. And the idea was that I was going to do like a spin-off with Mabel going sort of diverging from Darko, but still with a reference to Darko. He would either be mentoring her, or he'd be in the background, or maybe giving her advice. And so this is where Juliet's assertiveness comes in. She said, no. She said, if it's gonna be a new series, it's gotta be brand new. So, even though I had to chuck the first draft, which I had written, I will say she was right. She was absolutely correct that I did need to have a completely new character in a new setting without any reference to Darko whatsoever. And actually, it really,
it was so
it really helped because I didn't feel tied down by Darko. And Darko has a habit of lurking over your shoulder. And I would be doing this all the time. Whereas when he's not there and it's just with Emma, I feel a whole lot more relaxed. So, what I started out with, The Missing American, the idea came actually to me from one of my own experiences in Ghana. I had the misfortune of having my SUV stolen. And, as I reported this to the police and I went back and forth to police stations and to this commander and that commander, I started to get a real good look about the inside workings of the police. And in fact, it was a very rich experience. And I've always thanked the guy who stole my SUV for actually doing that to me, because actually it really helped. And so what I was going to do, I was actually going to write a story about a guy, an American guy who went to Ghana and got his SUV stolen. And then as I wrote it, I said, oh my God, this is so boring. I mean, I lived through that. And so, you know, it's really sort of traumatic to me, but I couldn't sort of convey that trauma onto the page. And so I thought, well, you know what about if the guy whose SUV went missing turned up dead? I said, now that would be a lot more interesting. And then as I sort of fleshed out the story, then I started to decide, well, you know, why don't we broaden it? Let's make it more international. Let's make some of it happen in the US. And I chose Washington, DC, and some of it happened in Ghana. And then it sort of became this project in which I was engaging these two cultures kind of clashing in Ghana and in Washington, DC. And so, you know, to me, this whole business of cultures coming together and either, you know, not really getting along or blending or both. And the book sort of flowered in that way, in which I was bringing in so many characters from both sides of the cultural divide, and, you know, some of them like right in the middle, like me, you know. And so it ended up to be a story with quite a few different sub-stories going in all sorts of directions, and then finally coming to, you know, the denouement where everything sort of came together. And I mean, I really enjoyed writing it. I really did. It was a lot of fun, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was a little tough at the end, you know, bringing everything together. And, you know, I had to do all the rewriting. It's like, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. But in the end, I was happy. And I was also very happy about Emma too, because, you know, she started out as a very mousy, sort of timid young lady, and she sort of grew into her role as a private detective. What happened was that after a Me Too movement, when she was at CID, she was kicked out of CID because, you know, she didn't succumb to the Me Too pressure on her, and so she was sacked. And then that way she joined a private detective agency, and that's how she became a PI. And I enjoyed sort of taking her out of that police procedural environment, even though there was still some police in it. So yeah, it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it. Really.
Yeah, I mean, the book is fantastic. And Kwei, you should know that my mom says it's one of the best books she's ever read. She reads a lot of mysteries, and she's really, really into it. So, and everyone at
Wow.
I told the staff that because she read it a couple weeks ago. She's like, "Have you read this book? Do you know this book?"
Mom.
Hey, Kwei, can I jump in here? I have a question for you. In talking about your process, you sound a lot like a pantser rather than a plotter, and yet your work is really well plotted and obviously really thought out. What are you? What? Or
I am a bit of a mix. Juliet has always asked me for a general synopsis so she can have an idea of, you know, what the story's about and where it's going. But what happens is during the course of, you know, writing it, I take all these detours, and sometimes the end of the story as I synopsized it is different from the final product. But it gives me a kind of just a kind of a guide map while I'm writing. But so I'm a bit of a blend of a pantser and a you know, a plotter. Yeah.
Is that plotzer?
Plotzer. Yeah.
How do you, Michael? That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I've come to that myself. I when I started, I avoided outlining, plotting, and I would just write scenes and eventually find a way to string them together.
Yeah.
And that's not a real efficient way of working. And so part of the growth of becoming a real author is having to at least some framework to start with, and that's grown considerably since my first book, and yet not one of the books that I've written ends up anything like the original plot. So
yeah. I think for me, it's a little bit, I feel a little less anxiety about where I'm going because I have this sort of roadmap. It's like if you were traveling somewhere and you didn't have your GPS, you feel a little bit more anxious about getting where you're going. So, but yeah, I like when certain things just pop up and it's like, oh, that sort of thing where I discover that somebody somebody who I didn't even think might be a suspect. Oh, wait a second, she's a suspect too, and then sometimes in my latest one, Sleep Well, My Lady, who Amara edited with me. I had three murderers. None of them worked out. None of them. And then one day I was just thinking about it, and suddenly I realized I'd left my own clue as to who was the real murderer. And I missed it. I set the clue, and then the author, missed it. And, once I had that, and I made all those changes, Amara said, oh, this is excellent, because we knew we had really hit the right person as the murderer. Yeah, so.
That's a beautiful thing about editing, though, when you're working on a story where you had an idea and then the editing unlocks a secret about the story that was clearly in your brain the whole time. I love seeing that happen. It says that there is organic life in a story.
Yeah,
and I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
We are at 6:45, so I'm supposed to open up. I'm supposed to open up to the audience for questions, and I will in just a moment. But I actually want to do 2 lightning rounds first. So you're each going to get to go and just keep the answers short so we can open up to the audience. The first is my backlist question. If you get to recommend only one book from your backlist to the readers here that they may not have encountered, but one that's really, really special to you, what is that book and why?
Well, I would truthfully say Wife of the Gods, even though I didn't publish that with Soho, and I apologize, Juliet. But there's nothing like the first novel. There really isn't. It's just so magical. You'll never have a first novel again. Once you've had a first novel, that's it. You'll never have it again. And so it was just the magic of having that first published. And, there was a sort of rawness of that first novel. Darko was really rough and raw, and he was quite a character, and I enjoyed writing him. Number 2, I would say, would be Murder at Cape 3 Points. I really love that one. I really love that.
That one is Soho, so everyone has recommended that one too.
Okay.
How about you, Michael? What's your backlist choice?
I'm also going to go with my first book. It's Black Fridays, and it's a Wall Street book, but it's not just a Wall Street book, because the protagonist, who is an ex-felon as well as an ex-Wall Streeter, ex-con as well, takes over the responsibility of being the parent for a 5-year-old autistic, his 5-year-old autistic son. And that relationship was a blast to write. And it was in that first book where really discovering the two of them and finding the love that they have and the trust that they build together was a whole lot of fun for me. And it's a good book. So Black Fridays.
Black Fridays.
Okay, lightning round 2, real quick. If you can recommend one book, not by you, to our audience today, something that you've read recently or that you really love, what is your recommendation? Kwei, you get to go first.
Well, after my mom died in June, we've been going through all her belongings, and there are books on books on books on books. And one thing that came up is James Baldwin. Tell me how long the train's been gone. I just picked it up and I started reading it, and I was gripped. It's not a mystery and not what I usually read, but it's really fascinating. He's a good writer. He is a good writer.
How about you, Michael?
Everybody's talking about it. Sean Cosby's Blacktop Wasteland. That it just really, really impressed me. I read his first book and thought, oh, this is good. This is great. And so I'll try the next one. And I was blown away by it. It's really a huge step up for him. So.
Awesome. Okay, well, now we do have some audience questions. So first, a real quick one for you, Michael. Do you still live in the New York area?
Yes, I live on Long Island on the North Shore. Not the only water view I have is through the trees in the dead of winter from the attic, but I'm not far from the water. So.
All right. The next question is for both of you. So Kwei, you can start. What is the oddest thing that you've ever come across during research?
The oddest thing. Well, I don't know that it was odd, but it's certainly an interesting experience. When I was researching for Murder at Cape Three Points, the setting there is an oil rig, which is like about 40 deep sea oil rig, about 40 miles off the coast of Ghana at a place called Cape Three Points. And I wanted to visit an oil rig. And actually, I managed to get a Scottish guy who was working with the oil rig team, and he invited me. And but the thing is, for you to get, it's a helicopter flight from the mainland to the rig. You have to undergo training. Everybody has to do it. So I went to a training session in Houston where they do a lot of the training for, and there were all these guys, all old hands, oil rig people there, who knew everything. And I was the only writer doctor, and nobody could understand what the hell I was doing there. But the thing is that the great test that everybody fears is on the third day, where you simulate a helicopter going down and turning over in the ocean. Oh, and you have to learn how to do that. And, they described it in the class. They said you must keep your elbow near at the window so that when you flip over 180 degrees, you know where you are and you can escape out the window. And he said there's always one person who totally messes it up. And you know what happened. It was me who messed it up. I just flailed and panicked under there. As soon as they flipped the water over, I didn't know where I was. I couldn't breathe. It was a disaster. So, and not odd, but it was really quite something as a as a research tool.
That's definitely, I can see the poetic pain you must have developed from that moment bearing fruit in fiction for sure.
Yeah, and Darko even did better at it than I did.
Hero, right? How about you, Michael?
Same question?
Yeah, same question.
Oh gosh. The fourth book in the Jason Stafford series, my autistic son goes walkabout out in the desert in New Mexico, and they have to search for him. And so I just for kicks, called up the head of search and rescue unit for the New Mexico State Police. And he said, oh, sure. And I went in and he gave me half a day and we talked about all kinds of stuff. And I described this thing when an autistic child lost in the desert. And he said, pull down this bound paperback book. And he said, page 117. And I looked, and it's a compendium of people lost. that all search and rescue people know about this book, and they all use it. And it's divided up into, oh, old people lost in the mountains go downhill. Young people go uphill. Things, weird little things like this. And there on page 117 is young autistic child lost in the desert.
Can we buy this book? Because it's
yeah.
useful for copy editors.
You can find it. He got me a copy, but I'm sure it's on Amazon.
Okay, I'll have to look into that.
I don't think it's something an indie bookstore would carry, but
you never know. There's all kinds of indies.
Exactly.
All right. The next question is also for both of you. What made your hero heroic to you? Did you find yourself dialing it back at all to make him or her more human? And the writer said, I'm always paranoid about this, about the humanity for the hero. Michael, do you want to go first?
Wow. I love both of my heroes are essentially damaged human beings as the books start, and humanizing them, teaching them how to love and trust and whatnot is part of my mission in writing them. And in this case, he's got a long way to go, and I think I will be able to continue that as well in the future. So.
Yeah, well, for me, I think Darko has always had this kind of conflicts between finesse and roughness. He's a guy who can get a little rough with people, but the human side, the humanity side of him is the love for his wife and his kids, which is sometimes, I think it was. There was one writer who said, never have your detective be married. Obviously, I broke that rule. And I think in my first novel, I think I went a little overboard in some of his violent acts, and I did have to dial back a little bit. But it was actually that aspect that people actually liked. They liked this sort of contrast between his loving self with his family and his sometimes near brutality to suspects, especially suspects that have harmed an innocent person. He used to go pretty ballistic about that. So I did have to dial that back a little bit, I think.
Thank you both. Well, Aline in the audience has left a comment about each of you, and I like them so much, I'm just going to read them out loud. First, that Kwei will be in Fort Lauderdale for the virtual literary feast, and they're really looking forward to it. And that Michael is so on point with his autistic child depiction that they have 4 people with autism in her husband's family, and the character is very realistic. So thank you all. That means a lot. Okay. Oh my gosh, we are at 4 minutes out. So I think if anyone has one last question right now that they quick want to get in, otherwise I'm going to have to hand the mic over to my colleague, Stephen. Oh, he's giving me the eye. I have to hand the mic over to him. Okay.
The eye.
It's like
the snake eye.
56, but it's 6:57. No, okay, so thank you. First, thank you, Michael and Kwei. This was lovely. I miss spending time both in person. I hope we can soon.
We'll do it someday.
someday. But in the meantime, this has been really wonderful, and it was nice to have you together. There's a lot of assonance in your books and in your wonderfully well fleshed out characters and the delicious food that they eat. So I hope sets of fans will discover the other. And also I want to send a very, very sincere thank you to everyone who's watching tonight and who's been here for multiple getaways. This has been wonderful. You've made our summer so much brighter. So thank you on behalf of all of Soho and myself. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. I couldn't say it better, Juliet. Thank you, everyone, for showing up and being part of this. It's been a crazy summer, and this has been a delight. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Kwei and Michael. This has been an amazing final Getaway event. So
thanks, Stephen,
amazing.
for putting it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank
It's
you
great.
very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.